This episode is proudly supported by Powerhouse Parramatta.
Powerhouse Parramatta will open in 2025. The new museum will be the largest in New South Wales and is determined to offer the very best in hospitality. Perhaps your business can be part of defining a food and beverage offering which is expected to cater to 2 million visitors a year. This incredible opportunity for operators includes retail food and beverage, in-house residential catering, events and other hospitality ventures, encapsulating the diversity of cuisines and cultures that make Western Sydney so exciting. Interested to learn more? Powerhouse invites food and beverage operators to a briefing on Tuesday, 8th of August. For more information and to register for this exclusive briefing, go to powerhouse.com.au.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Wonnarua people. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present.
It's a really special place, and I just want to be a part of getting the story back out to the people, explaining to everyone what Mount Pleasant is, the significance of it, getting people up here to enjoy it with me.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh, Wale. Adrian Sparks has ignited plenty of energy at Mount Pleasant Winery. One of the most important wineries in the history of Australia, it speaks loudly to Sparks' talent and ability that he joins the legacy as the 5th chief winemaker. As someone who speaks his mind and never misses a clock-off beer, I am thrilled to have Adrian Sparks join me today. Hi, Adrian. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm really well. And I'm so thrilled to have you on the podcast finally. So this is all about talking about you, Sparksy, all about your likes and dislikes. Do you like long walks on the beach? Are you that kind of guy?
As long as it's quick. I can do it fast. No, not really. Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course. Let's start at the beginning. You were born at Griffith. Where did the journey of wine begin for you?
I was actually born in a little town called Narrandera. Funnily enough. Yeah, and moved to Griffith. My grandparents lived on a station out there because they came over as 10-pound poms. My dad was actually born in England, so he came out. So we lived in Narrandera for a while. Then probably moved to Griffith in about 84, 85, showing my age. And then I remember sort of driving back and forth between Narrandera and Griffith and looking down in the car really fast, looking down the rows of vines. And that sort of sparked a bit of an interest. But it wasn't until I suppose I went to university, I was doing a chemistry degree and started meeting people that were doing wine science. And, they sort of, I couldn't believe wine science was a degree, to be quite honest. But they were really good people and good fun. And I think a good mate of mine who I played footy with, Joel Pizzini, gave me a bottle of wine for my 21st birthday. And it was beautiful. And then I started working for McWilliams. Just as a university holiday job, I was catching chickens at Barter's for the university holidays before that, and then thought I needed a change, something to use my brain, and so, took a job at McWilliams, just casually waxing tanks and all those sort of things, and, that's how it all sort of started, really.
Wow. Well, first off, you've just shocked me by talking about chemistry. I knew that you were a bit of a nerd, but I didn't know you're that much of a nerd.
A little bit, yeah. I was very good at maths and physics and chemistry and shocking with English, and talking to me, you can probably tell.
Not at all. That's amazing. And I can see, why kind of wine science is a little bit of a shocking. You're like, is this a real thing? Is this actually something that we can do? But what do you mean by you were catching chickens? What?
So I had to earn money during university holidays, just to help fund my drinking habit. And so I worked at Barter's Enterprises. So that was one of the big, industries out in Griffith at the time, and they had casual labour, and you just go out there and I think there was 36,000 chickens in a shed, and there was a crew of 10 of us, and you had to catch them all in a week. And then that's where they were raised, and they were taken back to the egg where they'd go and change them to a different shed where they'd collect the eggs.
Oh my gosh. As a city person, that just floors me. That's amazing.
36 chickens running around you all day, you end up with scratches and all sorts of things.
Do you eat chicken now?
Look, I'm a KFC lover, as you know. I did go off it for a while. When you start dreaming about chickens, it's time for a change.
I'm going to give you grief over that another time. So you also did a little bit of travel. So you also went over to France and did vintage over there. What was your time in France like, and what did that teach you? You're in the Ord department, weren't you? In Limoux?
Yeah, in Limoux. I did a trip with Boot Barrel Company in '06. It was the first time I went to France, and that was a good opener. I'd never been overseas before, so it was my first trip. And then I got a gig with Sieur d'Arc, which is a big cooperative, the major sparkling cooperative down in southern France. I think they're about 22,000 tonne or something, which is quite big. And that was really good. They're very automated, some of the systems they had, but I got to work on this program where they had, so for charity, for the town, they have all these individual plots of Chardonnay, and then they would, for 2 acres, I think, everyone produced 2 acres of the best Chardonnay they could, so they cropped it right down, manipulated, so all the rest of the vineyards were cropped quite high because it's a big high-producing area for sparkling, but then this little patch, they made the best possible Chardonnay, and so I think there was like 68 growers, and they all had 4 barrels or 4 barriques of Chardonnay, and that was my first stint overseas. It was amazing. And they're very different to Australian wine, as in, we're very analytical, lots of testing, etc., whereas they just press the juice in the barrel, check the NTU, and let it rip, really. There was no acid adjustments. There was no yeast. Yeah, very, very different, but good to understand how they did it and good to get a sort of outsider's perspective and things to utilise, further down the track when I took over the Chardonnay production at McWilliams.
Yeah, the simple life of just popping it in and see how it goes. That kind of makes sense, though. Is that where your love affair of Chardonnay kind of started?
Yeah, it was sort of in and around there. I sort of got thrown the gig by default, really, at McWilliams in about 05, 06 when they were shutting down the site, so that all the premium wines were done at a little site called Yenda, and so all the major production was done out at the bigger winery at Hamwood. And I worked at Yenda my whole career virtually until they shut the site down in 08. And there was no one who said to do it, so I just jumped in on the Chardonnay. So we did, all through Tumbarumba, the Yarra Valley, through Lilydale. I got to work on all that. So it was probably 04. So 04 we started in Tumbarumba, so I was assistant winemaker then. And then it transformed into the 842 that we made there. And just that was all I did, really, was Chardonnay for maybe 7 years until that's all I made, really, was Chardonnay. And so, tasting wines, got to go. We bought Evans and Tate in 05, so got to go over and do tastings with Matt Byrne over there at Evans and Tate. But just get to see Chardonnay. That's everything I drank, everything I read about, everything I made was just Chardonnay.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense because, your Chardonnays are fantastic, but they are such a pleasant wine to drink all the time, and they're so different wherever you are. I can imagine how different it must have been to be over in WA and looking at their clones and what they do over there and their climate, which is completely different. You touched on the fact that you joined McWilliams in 1998, is that right? And then you joined the winemaking team at Mount Pleasant in 2014.
Yeah, I think 98 was my first year as a vintage, well, not really vintage, I did holidays, so 99 was my first vintage, but I joined about November 98. Yeah, waxing tanks, filling barrels, cleaning floors, cleaning tanks, just all the usual stuff. And I really, I'd done 3 years at university and I wasn't getting very far with my degree in terms of I was having too much fun playing football, drinking. So I thought I'd better settle down, do my degree by distance and then just start working and find something that I really love doing. And wine was good. There was heaps of winemakers there. At the time, Russell Cody was one who you probably know, but he was very good. We played footy against each other. I used to smash him all the time, but he was good in terms of he's very down to earth and he would just explain things to you in a way that made sense and you could apply that. And he said something along the lines of, he had like 50 barrels, all different barrels of the same wine in it. And he asked me to get a blend out one day and he said, I want that barrel, that barrel, that barrel, that barrel. And I said, well, why don't you just put them all in the same barrel? Then it's easier. And he goes, well, they're all different. It's all the same wine, but every barrel makes a different wine and it's blending those different barrels to make this greater wine, which was probably the light bulb moment, I suppose, for me. And I went, well, that's pretty cool. And then it sort of just escalated from there. I couldn't taste the difference between Semillon and Chardonnay and Riesling or anything. They were just white wines on the bench. But they'd call you in and do tastings. McWilliams offered to put me through university, so I jumped at that to change over to wine science. And then I just got really involved in it. And I don't know, when you're young and keen and you're just jumping into everything and wanting to do as much as you can, and the annoying kid that asks questions, but, that's what it was. And just access to fruit. Like working for a big company, we made fruit, we made wines from WA, Eden Valley, McLaren Vale, Barossa, Yarra, Tumbarumba, Hilltops, Orange, everywhere. So you got to see a lot. Vintages were hectic, so vintages would go 3 or 4 months, but the experience you got in that vintage was, you couldn't get it anywhere else, I suppose.
Yeah. What do you remember a time where you talked a little bit about looking at, talking about the different barrels and having that light bulb moment. Do you remember a time where you realised that, McWilliams and Mount Pleasant was a really big deal in terms of the scope of Australia, and your kind of first impressions of working for a company that meant something, as opposed to how that's changed over time now?
I having not come through the wine industry as a youngster, I didn't get or appreciate the scale, the size, the history or anything like that. I had to learn it all on the job. So, McWilliams were just a winery. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know what they produced. I didn't understand the history until I started working for them and working alongside the winemakers, the family, Doug McWilliams was there, and just talking to them. And they would tell you about stories about their granddad or other people. And then you started going, oh, that's interesting. And back in time, a number of years. And then you'd go to like wine shows back before you were judging, but just to do the tastings and meet other winemakers from different regions, and you'd ask their story and they'd tell you their story. And then you can see all these links. You can see how all these regions back in the day were helping each other out and working together, I suppose. And then I didn't understand the significance of Mount Pleasant, I suppose, until sort of Phil Ryan would come down for tastings, and everyone would sort of line up to taste Lovedale. And then I think one of the, I can't remember who it was, maybe it might have been Codes or someone back in the day, sort of just explained what Mount Pleasant was and how important it was. And that's pretty, that's significant for the Australian wine industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine there's so many working parts, and like you said, it's a big company. There's so much going on, and unless you kind of have somebody that as a mentor or you have somebody that's followed the Australian wine industry for a long time, it's hard to really appreciate or gather that kind of scope when you are in your kind of younger years, I suppose. But we have to talk about Maurice O'Shea because, it's got to be done. I was going to mention that The Wine Hunter, which is an amazing book by Campbell Matheson, you actually gave it to me, and it's an incredible read. It's the life story of Australia's first great winemaker. Is definitely a good place for anyone to start. But can you tell us a little bit about Maurice O'Shea's legacy and what that means to you and what it's brought to your experience?
Yeah, I sort of only really learnt about Maurice O'Shea when I came to Mount Pleasant. I'd heard his name, I'd read The Wine Hunter. And it's funny, we just had Campbell Matheson up here a month or so ago because we're getting him to redo the book because we've sold out, I suppose, and we want more copies. We want to share that story because it's such a good story. I suppose it's his ability to pick sites, well before anyone else. Other people in the valley were here, but he sort of came in and saw the old hill for what it was and realised the old paddock right next to it had so much potential. It's perfectly sheltered. It's, arguably, the best site in the valley for its protection from the afternoon winds and sun. It's just an unreal sort of backdrop for grape growing. And then to be able to look at Lovedale and realise the potential there, to see Rose Hill for what it was, and nail those sites. He was the first person to, begin working with refrigeration. Throwing ice blocks into the tanks is probably frowned upon now, but, he understood what it meant and what the impact it had on the wines going forward, I suppose. So it was all those little things that he did, and we don't know how he did it. There's not a lot of records kept. I think Brian Walsh, who was put on as winemaker after him, only got to work with him for one vintage. So it's sort of, you get to taste the wines and they're freaks. I've had lucky to have a few of his wines, and they just open up so beautifully. And it's amazing that they're, 70, I don't even know, probably older than that nowadays, year-old wines. They're just amazing. And to be able to pick his brain and say, how did you do that? What did you do? How did you pick it? What all those questions. Trying to work it out anyway. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Crazy. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it must be, there's, I suppose, that little bit of mystery around it is what was he thinking at this time and where did he get his ideas from? I mean, what I love about that book is that it doesn't just tell you about Maurice Sachet, it really puts you in his world. And so you can kind of imagine what life was like going about at that time. And I think that maybe that is, like I said, the mystery of it all, of how was this person so ahead of his time, and what was he thinking when he was making these wines? And they are transportive, so pretty incredible. But you work with some amazing esteemed sites now that he established. So talk a little bit about Old Hill, Old Paddock, Lovedale and Rose Hill, and is there a particular site that you look forward to working with every year?
Yeah. Look, he probably got his... Just to go back on it, being thrown on a boat when you're 15 years old to go to France by yourself back in 1915, I suppose, would be pretty daunting. And then over to France to do your university, that's a pretty amazing thing. And then lecturing at a university when you're so young. I don't know.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. Anyway, back to vineyards. Sorry, I was just...
I don't know, at 15, totally. What I was doing at 15, I don't know. I don't even think I knew my right arm from my left leg. I wouldn't have had a clue. It's pretty unique, and it does make me think, what are we doing with our children today?
Exactly. It's very different. I suppose sites, they're all... Lovedale was the one back in when I started out early. Lovedale was... the pinnacle for Mount Pleasant, who was always, the whites are always the strength here. But I think over time that's changed, that the reds are now getting the acclaim they deserve. They are some beautiful sites. The Old Hill is a pretty freaky vineyard in terms of, it's almost like not a set and forget, but it sits there and it can handle the heat waves. It can handle the wet years. Through 2016, which was a shocker, the fruit off it was amazing, clean. It doesn't, it throws its fruit load every year. It's the same, exactly what you're going to get off it. Uses, a third of the water of anything else around the place. It has this character that's very, very unique, and you can pick it in a lineup. So if I line all that wines up, you can just go, well, that's the Old Hill. You can start cancelling, working out what the other ones are. It's a bit of amazing. And that was sort of the one that I loved when I first came up here. These days, though, I don't know. I moved to the Hunter Valley to work with Rose Hill. I did a tasting up here in 2012 with Shadow and Higo and Scotty Mack and there was someone else here. Yeah, we did a tasting and all these wines were blind, and I went through and went, I like that, and they were just all unrevealed, I suppose is the word, and they were all Rose Hill. I went, shit, that's a good vineyard. I want to work with that. And so it was sort of a bit of a focus of mine to look at Rose Hill, and that's why I moved up here. But it's not so much a fair weather vineyard, but it in the great years, like the 14s, the 18s and that, it's for me, it stands above, everything else. It is an amazing vineyard. I think consistency-wise, Old Paddock, Old Hill, probably a bit more consistent. But I like that. We set up our vineyards, we do everything to make the greatest wines we possibly can. There's no consistency for me is, I'd rather make the greatest one I can in 1 year and it'd be slightly poorer the following year if it's a shit year, I suppose. I don't think I'm doing it justice by saying that. But, for me, it's just about making the greatest wine you possibly can. That's what it is. Respecting the fruit, getting into the bottle. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, well, that's not necessarily an easy feat, but I've always loved when you speak about Rosehill because I can tell the reverie that you have for the vineyard. I mean, it was planted in 1946. Am I pulling that out of my?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, 46, and then the second block was planted in 65 by Brian Walsh, and they're the best sites. And they're amazing. Like the fruit, I think in 14. The fruit off the 65 vines, I'd actually gone home, so I didn't get to see it picked. I'd come and did vintage in 14 before moving up here, so I didn't get to see it picked. But it looked amazing, like unreal. The canopy was perfect. The fruit was perfect. Just the amount of light hitting the fruit zone, like everything was just spot on. And it's having that, perfectness in the vineyard that lets you make great wines. You can't polish a turd, I suppose, is the saying. If you need great fruit to be able to make those great wines, and we're very lucky that we've got these vineyards.
I imagine, being that it's planted so long ago that the yields are slightly lower. Do you ever get frustrated you can't make more, or is that part of the beauty that you can only have a certain amount of yields and that's all that each year gives you? I don't know. I think it is what it is. I've never really thought about that, to be honest. You take what nature gives you. You set it up to give you the best quality fruit, and if that means a slightly lower yield, we went through all those drought years through 17, 18, 19, and didn't get much fruit off it. But the wines are amazing. This year in 22, we had a fair bit of rain throughout October, and so the yields are slightly up, but the fruit quality is still outstanding. Like, it's just one of those things where you just do your best to get what you get and don't get upset, I suppose. That's what I tell the kids. Yeah, well, that makes sense. You're not wishing for anything that you can't change. It's what you give, and you feel grateful for that. So you said that very well. Talk me through, if you were to kind of, like you said, you can pick it in a lineup. Talk me through what makes Rosehill in the glass so special, because I've been wanting to ask you this for a long time, and I might as well do it when I can record it. But just for you personally, what is the beauty in Rosehill through aroma and taste?
When I first looked at it in that lineup, it had this floral violet red fruit note that I'd never seen anywhere before. So for me, it was unique. It was almost like a pomegranate-y, I've always been shocking with my descriptors, but it has this floral lift, this aromatic, which defines it. And for me, making sure that's in the wine is, that's what Rosehill is all about. Red fruited, and the palate is this seamless, beautiful acidity, fine tannin structure, elegance, balance, length, all key attributes of great wines, and it just has all that. And I'm a Pinot drinker, a Shiraz drinker, medium-bodied, light-bodied wines. That's what I love to drink, and it has elements of everything. Like it's always going to be that, and it's just so appealing. Very
well said. That was exactly what I wanted to hear, and I love it. Thank you.
I'll send you a bottle.
That's been on record now, so you're in trouble. You're not going to like this next question, but since your time at the helm, you've had some incredible accolades. New South Wales Wine of the Year in 2018 and 2019, Hunter Valley Red Wine of the Year 2018, 2019, Hunter Valley Winemaker of the Year in 2019. How does it feel to be achieving such huge heights within the first years of being in charge? And have you peaked too early, or is this just the beginning?
Well, I cry myself to sleep thinking I have peaked too early. Look, you get 18 and 19, or 7, it was actually 17 and 18 wines. Put me on the spot here. Look, I just came in, worked with Chatto for a few years, understood, the vineyards. You can't walk into a place and make impactful change straight away. You need to respect what's been happening in the past, and you look at it, take stock, see what you think is right and wrong, I learnt off Jim for, I think he left at the end of 16, so 3 or 4 years, and understood the direction that we both sort of thought Mount Pleasant needs to go, and took all that in, watched what he was doing, and it's just minor tweaks here and there. I mean, Mount Pleasant historically through the 2000s were over oak. That was the comments, but they were wines at the time. They were selling out every year. They were getting good scores. The 2000 O'Shea beat everything, I think, that year in the Halliday book. So, but I think oak is sort of a detractor, but it needs to be more in balance. It can't be the first thing you smell or taste. And so it's just about backing that out, making sure we're using the right oak and respecting the vineyard. We bought a heap of little tanks to be able to keep everything separate. It was investment in the place that allowed those results. The ability to be able to pick a block of wine when you want to pick it, instead of having to wait an extra day because the tanks are full, or having to press something off early because you're picking this other block. Like having space, having the tank sizes, having the ability to pick, having all the tools at your disposal to be able to make the greatest wines is, paramount to be able to do that. If I know when Phil was making wines, his smallest tank size was a 10-tonner, so he'd have to pick the old paddock and chuck something else in on top of it. Whereas we've got 2-tonners, 5-tonners, 10-tonners, everything we need. We can pick 800 kilos and ferment it separately now. So we're very fortunate. We can keep every block separate. We can minimise our oak. You can always add oak back in if you think it needs it, but reducing it, having fruit as the key, having block characters defined, being able to see the unique sites in each of those wines, and then being able to showcase them in the significant sites wines we have. Blending the best possible O'Shea we can, making Rose Hill every best barrel we possibly can, not just getting it thrown together in the vineyard. It is all super important. And, the results, I think we had a great team through that time. Paul Harvey was the viticulturist then, he did a great job. People in the winery, you can't do it by yourself. It's a reflection of, the people at the time and the vineyards and the effort that everyone put in, really.
Yeah, very true. And you're in such a good position now, and I hope that the vintages continue in the fashion of the 18s and the 19s here on out. But I think, it's in incredibly good hands. It's been 100 years since Leontine O'Shea purchased the Pecolton property. What's next for Mount Pleasant, and what's next for Mr. Adrian Sparks?
All I'm thinking about is I've peaked too early now. Thank you for that. What's next? We've obviously the McWilliams and Mount Pleasant split up last year, May 2021, and were purchased by the Medici family, and there's been huge investment. Mainly, the cellar doors undergoing renovations, and it's, almost ready to go, a couple more weeks, and that'll be opened up to the public. That's going to be unreal. The detail in that place, what it's going to offer, is going to be huge, not just for Mount Pleasant, for the valley. Hopefully, this side of the valley has always been tough to get people. It's a bit of a drive to get to Mount Pleasant, but it's going to benefit not just us, but everyone on this side of the valley as a place to come. It's going to be amazing. We've just put a chef on, and it's all those fine details about making that experience really, really good. But I think Mount Pleasant, we've just bought a new harvester. We've bought, the best sorting equipment you can for the winery. We've never had sorting equipment in the winery, so all those wines that you spoke about earlier winning those trophies were just handpicked in the vineyard and sent through this huge fruit destroyer into tank. Now we can, all whole berries, everything's sorted out. This optical sorter just pings out anything that's slightly deformed or slightly off colour, so it's only the best fruit coming through. So, consistency of quality, I think, will increase, and hopefully those extra 1%ers will drive our quality up even more. In terms of myself, I have no idea. I'll be here. Look, I've never thought about it. I don't really think about the past or the future too often, which drives everyone around me insane. But, I think, I don't know, I want to get Mount Pleasant back to where it was. It went through a few years of, not the doldrums, I don't know, a hiatus, dormancy. But it's a really special place, and I just want to be a part of getting this specialness, or getting the story back out to the people, explaining to everyone what Mount Pleasant is, the significance of it, getting people up here to enjoy it with me. You're welcome to come up whenever you've got a free day, just to come up here, get out the vineyards, have a taste of a wine, understand why the wine looks like it does. And go to Rose Hill and stand in the vines and have a sip of the wine, and you can explain, once you're there and you can explain to someone why this wine looks like it is, it's that can start a real domino effect of understanding and learning and wanting to know more about wine, which I think is really cool.
Absolutely. And look, it's funny because you said you don't think too much about the past or too much about the future, but I think that you do. And I think it's important that you touched on earlier a little bit about oak usage in the wines and the, and being wines at the time. And I think that that's so important, because I think it is, whether or not you think that they're the trendiest wines now, it's so important to understand what was in demand and what people wanted and what was happening at that time, to then move on to something new. And I think about Chardonnay now and where we are in Australia with Chardonnay, and we couldn't be at that place of restraint and poise and elegance without having that moment where we had these big, rich, clunky oak Chardonnay. So I kind of think that, your understanding of what's happened in the past and where you're headed is something that maybe you don't consciously do, but subconsciously it's there. And I think that is why you're in such a good position to take a Mount Pleasant to the next place, wherever it may be. And I'm so excited to see the new cellar door. I'm scared because I actually loved the little old cellar door. I think it was really quaint and cute. So, but I'm really excited. I'm sure that it's going to be still have its little quirks and should be really impressive. And like you said, bring more people there so that they can visit and taste the wines.
Yeah. Look, it's still the same shell. It's just had a good paint job.
Perfect. And we all need that sometimes.
A really good paint job. Yeah, no, it's going to be amazing.
Awesome. Adrian, I ask everybody, if you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
I should have thought about this. I've listened to your podcast too, so I should have known this was coming. Look, I need a beer. Yes. Yeah, look, I need a beer at the end of the day, just one. I drink lager. Because I can't do IPAs and XPAs and all this sort of stuff. I am far too sensitive to bitterness, so they destroy me. So a good lager, nice easy drinking lager. Pinot and Shiraz, I would say, would be my other two. For reasons I think I've probably already stated, but yeah, I just think, my interest in Pinot and Shiraz far outweighs. I mean, as I said, I was a Chardonnay lover since the dawn of time, but, I think that's right. Do you need brands, etc., or just happy with that? You.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy. Kind of thought that that's where it'd be, but you never know. People sometimes throw out random things and you're not sure. But I do have a question. If you're not going to be drinking Hunter Shiraz, what other Shiraz would you be drinking? Not as your last drink on earth, but I mean, if you're not drinking Hunter Shiraz, where else do you enjoy drinking Shiraz from?
The Rhone. I'm absolutely in love with Rostang, which I'm sure everyone else is. I just can't afford it. Great question. Great question.
I thought you might say the Rhone, but I was interested to see if you'd say somewhere else in Australia as well. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, look, that's where I'd go. That's where I'd go first. If money was an object, I'd go there.
Absolutely. Well, I have to, some of those Rhone Valley Syrahs are life-changing, so I can understand why you'd say that. Well, look, it's been a pleasure having you on, Adrian. It's always a pleasure when you're around, and I love your honesty. I love hearing you talk about wine. I definitely hope I can get up there soon when you're ready to have visitors. And I hope that, you stop dreaming about chickens and start dreaming about whole shiny berries. with that gorgeous optical sorter that you now have. And thank you so much for making the time. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that we finally got you on here.
Yeah, thank you. Look, it's been great. Good to talk.
It's definitely worth it. Cheers to you, mate.
Thank you.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.